Hi, I'm the Ceaseless Author, and this is going to be my writing-focused review of Castlevania Season 4. This review is meant to be watched in tandem with yesterday's episode about endings. This came to mind because I recently just finished Castlevania Season 4, and man, that was a wild ride. That show was something very dear to me. It was something I picked up during a season of transition in my life where I was just beginning to be exposed to more mature media. So like Castlevania Seasons 1 and 2, I watched those right as they came out, and it was shocking to me how visceral it was, how bloody, how awesomely animated some of the fight scenes were, how witty the dialogue was. It was a very gritty story, one that seemed very dark. And as I began to grow as a writer and an author, I began to wonder, what were the themes of Castlevania? Castlevania seemed to have very strong themes of death, of hopelessness, of fighting against an unstoppable darkness that is consuming the planet, of grief, death, betrayal. But it had such moments of brightness. In Season 2, when our characters first conquered Dracula, it's so triumphant. It feels like the world is gonna change. And then in Season 3, they end up taking a little bit of that away with new villains rising up. It seems like, despite all of our heroes' best efforts, the world will inevitably be consumed by darkness. It reminded me much of a Stephen King novel in a lot of ways, how it went so dark and then showed us these bright moments of fellowship and kinship between these main characters, of Belmont and Sypha's growing love for each other, of Alucard coming out of his shell to experience human bonds of kinship, and even of Isaac, one of the characters that has such incredible development through the series. His change from a helpless, worshipping servant to a powerful individual who wants to build a new world with his own ideals. Such conflicting themes, it seems, but when Season 4 began to draw into its finale, there was one scene that redefined the whole narrative for me. It is revealed in Season 4 that Death has been one of the main antagonists of the series this whole time. He's been hiding in Dracula's court. He wants to bring Dracula back to life because he believes that if he brings him back and drives him mad, he will unleash infinite murder upon the planet, basically. And that's what Death wants. This isn't real death. This is just simply a creature called Death that feeds off of death, they explain. And I found that very interesting. I was like, oh, is this a new villain for Season 5? But then the animation changed, and Trevor Belmont is sitting alone with Death, saying goodbye to his friends, and I realized, oh my gosh, the series is ending. This is an ending. This is what stories do when they're writing at the end of a character, the end of a story. And Belmont stands up to Death, and Death is being snarky, of course, because Castlevania doesn't hold a lot of things very holy besides Dracula himself. Death comes across as very snippy, very dismissive of human life, and it's very effective. We get this awesome moment where Trevor Belmont faces Death and tells him, "You and I were just old killers." And I realized then what the theme of the show was. The theme of the show is about death. It's about killing, but it's about bringing an end to death and killing. Because death and killing are two things that are very real in our world, and Castlevania has no fear of exploring these themes of death and darkness. But when it comes to Trevor Belmont facing down death and is seemingly dying in the process, it changes how I viewed the whole series. Because up to this point, I had been hesitant to recommend Castlevania to some people just because of how gory it was, and unashamedly gory. It was all about that killing, that gruesome, graphic violence and murder. And without purpose, I don't enjoy graphic violence and murder. I like it when it serves a purpose in the narrative. And for Castlevania, I always felt that it tied well into the themes, but it was the ending, this ending where Trevor faces down death, where I realized why the ending was so powerful and why, for me, it redefined all of Castlevania. It redefined every episode up to that point, because it was showing that Trevor Belmont, a creature designed only to kill. He was raised in a family whose only purpose was to kill. And yes, it was to kill in order to protect, but that was their skill set. He didn't learn anything else. Sypha is shown throughout season 4 to use her magic in order to kill, yes, but use her other skills in order to promote life. And whenever she's going out and helping people, Trevor just tends to wander around looking for another chance to fight because that's all he knows. And that's something very sad for our main character in this case. He senses that this is a final battle between him and death. And once it's finished, there's no more need for killers in the world. So that's why he planned on dying in the act. And even though later on we do see that Trevor survives, which I was personally very happy about because Sypha was pregnant and I wanted to see him have a happy ending, the theme didn't change for me, despite the fact that Belmont survived. The ending of the show is about bringing it into death. How fighting in darkness drags on the soul. Sypha, Alucard, even Trevor, Belmont, they feel death dragging upon them. Isaac in season 3 was very expressive about how much more they could do with their powers besides inflicting death. He talks to the night creatures in season 4 especially about how they were used only for death, but he can use them for something else, to build a new kingdom. And even though Isaac doesn't show up for the rest of the series after his epic final confrontation with Carmilla, it still ties in deeply with the show's themes of rebuilding. It shows that there are periods of darkness and death in the world, but in the end, those come to an end. There is death, yes, there is violence and darkness, but when you rise up to fight it, an end comes about and a new chapter is opened, a new chapter for the world. Sometimes even just personally, if you're going through a dark time of fighting for survival and battling against death, eventually that comes to an end. And in Trevor's case, it says it either comes to an end where you die in the fight or you live to see a brighter day. And for Trevor, he was fighting so someone else could have a brighter day. And that was what redefined Castlevania for me in that ending. It's what makes the show, in my opinion, have a great ending. Even though the ending isn't perfect, there's a lot of stuff I wish could have been expounded upon, but for something that, from what I was researching, was a surprise to the show writers as well. I think that they were expecting another season, even though I can't credit that. I haven't found any concrete information about that, but for an ending that seemed a bit rushed, the show writers had a chance to show off their skills with all the little endings they built up to at this point. Alucard begins to come out of his shell after being hurt deeply in season 3. Isaac begins to embrace his powers in a new way after season 3. And Trevor and Sypha realize they are on a journey where they realize that even though they use their powers for death, they would rather use them for life. After the battle is won, what will they do? The answer is rebuild, foster new life, open new doors, and it's truly beautiful. Castlevania Season 4 was an absolute win in my opinion. Yes, it has flaws. I may go over them at a later date, but mostly I was left glowing with how awesomely the themes were fulfilled, how the promises that the show made to us as their audience were kept. And no ending's going to be perfect. I think Castlevania Season 4 is perhaps even a bit further from perfect than a lot of other stories I've seen, but it gave us one of the best endings we could possibly get for a story, one that's satisfying, closes the door, and fulfills all of our promises in the original narrative, while also providing a chance for future journeys. Dracula ends up surviving in the end. That's pretty cool. He and his wife are going to rebuild their life. Our tragic villain from the first 2 seasons has an almost satisfying ending. The Belmont line will continue. And what more can you really ask for an ending, other than fulfilling the promises in an epic and satisfying way, setting our characters up in a way that makes us happy for them, and promising us more journeys in the future. I wish I could write all my endings exactly like that. But thank you for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell icon, because for the next month, I'm going to be trying to upload daily. That's a goal I've set with me and a couple other friends. And every day there should be a new video on your feed. So if you want to stick around for that journey, or if you're coming in later, make sure to check out what I've done for the past month and what I'm going to do. My next video will probably be covering a series I enjoyed on Hulu entitled MODOK. So if you want to see that, show up again tomorrow and that video should be up. But I hope you have a great day, and remember, never stop making.